Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar discussion video. This one is going to be about this Buzzfeed article, which is called "These Unpopular Avatar The Last Airbender Opinions Will Make You See the Show in a New Light." I don't often talk a lot about these sort of articles that come out from these sites like Buzzfeed and CBR, where they are very clickbaity. They're just trying to capture the fact that, oh, Avatar's popular right now, let's put up a bunch of articles, let's get as many views as possible, which is clearly what this is. Framing it as unpopular opinions will get Avatar fans coming in here to talk about them, and that's all they want to do. They probably don't even care about these opinions too much, but they'll bring in eyes to the point. What I found interesting about this one, though, is that it's not this random author. It's not her points about Avatar. Instead, she sort of compiled sort of like community opinions, like strong community opinions, because this article is made up of comments that were posted on this article. So basically she asked for, do you have strong Avatar The Last Airbender opinions? Leave them in the comment below. And where is it? The 453 comments turned into these, I think, 23 points about Avatar The Last Airbender. Now, very quickly, we should probably note the kind of things they use to frame what unpopular opinions are, of just like, maybe you think Momo is really annoying and doesn't deserve all the love. Perhaps you think Katara should have ended up with Zuko instead of Aang. Or maybe you think Toph's character is totally overrated and you wish he never joined the squad. So, this one especially, I think, ends up framing a lot of the points in this article towards Zutara and towards shipping. Whereas I don't know if there'd be as many if this was left out and it was just the Momo and the Toph one. So it is important to note here that these aren't just, found opinions online. These were sort of asked for opinions and they're just selected here. So let's get into it. Number one, Zutara is obviously far superior to Katang. Of course, this is what you start off with. Shipping wars always gets people talking. So, Katara and Aang shouldn't have ended up together. Katara had such a motherly instinct towards Aang. Of course, that it just felt weird for them to end up together. Katara and Zuko. Now, there's a ship I'll sync with. They had so many moments together that it felt like they were leading to a romantic relationship. So many moments. I wonder how many they're going to list. I wonder, will it be the only three scenes that can in any way be viewed in that direction? Or will there be more? The Crystal Catacombs, of course. When they sought out Katara's mother's killer, of course. And going together to fight Azula. Zuko took a lightning blast for her. Of course. So it is the three expected ones, nothing else. Completely ignoring the fact that these three scenes don't serve as romantic setup, but instead set up for these characters eventually becoming friends. The friendship that seemed least likely to happen from the start of the series, given Fire Nation Water Tribe, they actually do become friends and part of the same team. But romance is a huge stretch just from those three scenes. Again, trying to argue with points from the show that Zutara should have happened, I think, has always been like the core issue within the sort of shipping community. It's okay to like Zutara, but when you're actually arguing about why the canon ship is bad and shouldn't happen, and using evidence from the show to suggest why this scene should happen, that's what creates a lot of the issues. So, not to mention yin and yang, there was a whole plot point with the moon and ocean fish in the season 1 finale. Fire and water, yin and yang, it would have been so good. So, it's bad when, here are the three scenes that I think represent the relationship. Oh, and also symbolism. Really basic, just opposites symbolism. That is why the two characters should be together. So, by the same logic, this helps to support Mei and Zuko, because they sort of have opposite personalities and they work really well together. So yeah, this is great shipping evidence support for Mei and Zuko, and you can see the problem of when you get away from the specifics, you have to get into vague stuff that can sort of apply to almost anything. And look, it's cool, it's fun, it's a part of the sort of fandom community, is to always talk about ships in this way, potential ships of these two characters would work together because of this, and this similarity. But there's a difference between talking about scenes from the show that clearly lean towards a ship happening versus just shipping speculation. Number two, Katara is actually an incredibly selfish human being. Katara was the worst character in the whole series. She had zero personal growth and remained a whiny baby the entire time. She had zero empathy for those around her, and they just used the "they killed my mother" excuse for every little thing she did. Becoming the Painted Lady was also a super selfish thing to do. She knew that they had a more important mission, and her helping out that village was not an act of kindness. Her being mad at her dad for going to fight in a war was also super annoying. Honestly, she was just bad overall. So here is a true unpopular opinion of just an incredibly bad take on Katara as a character. Obviously, it's their personal opinion and they're entitled to that. But when you go into explaining your opinion and it's just these vague points that don't make a lot of sense, you create it as a really, really bad take. So really, Katara is the worst character in the whole series. You can't come up with another single character who is worse. That's incredible. Zero personal growth. Really? Remained a whiny baby the entire time. Katara being whiny. Like I'm struggling to even think of like one scene where Katara, I would say, is being whiny. Specifically. So like I don't know. Maybe I'm just forgetting something, but like the entire time, like it's such hyperbole here. That's the problem here. She had zero empathy for those around her. That is like directly the opposite of her character, where she cares about everyone around her, and there's a direct contradiction in this point. Zero empathy for those around her, helping out the village. So, you know, again, to keep their point consistent, they have to say that helping the village was not an act of kindness. Really? Like, she was trying to help the village. Ultimately, Sokka pointed out that just helping them in this way won't help them in the long run. But ultimately, the team came together in that episode to truly help the village. Help the people who lived on that river. And it worked, because the Fire Nation wasn't helping their own village. And that's the point in that episode. The Fire Nation badly affects just as many of their own towns as they do other nations. So the gang stopping to help out was an important note of the whole Fire Nation is not the enemy. The enemy is the military and the sort of leaders of the Fire Nation, not the people of the Fire Nation. So Katara choosing to help a Fire Nation village was an important thing to show for her, that her hatred of the Fire Nation was not the same as Jet's. She specifically had anger towards Yon Ra, which comes out in the Southern Raiders. You know, everything just being about "they killed my mother" as an excuse. When does she use this as an excuse? And then like her being mad at her dad for going to fight in the war was also super annoying. Like, she can't be upset that she didn't have her father after their mother died, that her father left to fight in the war. She can't be upset that, you know, both of her parents were gone and it put pressure on both of them. She's not allowed to feel that. That's the problem here. This person talks about Katara having zero empathy, but this post shows zero empathy for the character. Number 3, Aang taking away Ozai's bending is beyond stupid. Aang taking away Ozai's bending instead of killing him was a dangerously stupid and selfish move. He remains true to his values as an air nomad, but Ozai still holds political and military strength without his bending. Not really. Like, if you read the comics, you can see he's just in prison. And while he has sort of supporters on the outside, there's no real connection between the two. And it's pretty much shut down within, like, Smoke and Shadow, the comic. He doesn't hold any more strength after this. Like, this person seems to be taking it as just, Aang took his bending away and he was just free but still allowed to do what he wanted. When he was arrested and put in prison, we saw him in prison in the show. Even if you haven't read the comics, you know he's in prison. So I don't get that point. He doesn't have strength in the aftermath of this. Was it a stupid and selfish move? No, because he went into the fight knowing that he had this ability to use ultimately. It was only revealed to us towards the end, but he got the ability from the Lion Turtle prior to the battle with Ozai, so he had that going in. Did he know he could use it for sure? You know, perhaps, but that's part of the, I suppose, strength of the finale, is that they let a character stick to his ideals. They let his optimism and idealism work, and he was able to get through this issue while staying sort of pure as an air nomad. And there's so much value in that, of him not having to kill because he is the last airbender. And that was such an important, hopeful note to have at the end of the series. The other point here, Energybending was a total Deus Ex Machina. The ending was still good, but giving Aang such an easy way out of his moral dilemma was lazy. Look, I honestly will say that the only reason I know what Deus Ex Machina means is because it's been brought up so much in relation to the finale of Avatar. I've never seen this term used as much as it is in relation to Avatar. It is such a sort of tropey, you know, one line, this is why it's bad, Deus Ex Machina. And it's like, is it a Deus Ex Machina? Like, kind of, but it also does have setup from before. And because of where the lore ends up going with Energybending and the Line Turtles, it's a whole lot more than that. In that, are you not allowed to do a reveal of any sort in the finale without it being referred to as a Deus Ex Machina because it was something that was revealed, something that happened towards the end? That's the problem I have. In that, the explanation here is basically that, hey, how did bending come about? In the era before the Avatar, we bend the energy within. We use energy bending before bending. Here, as a Line Turtle, I am giving this ability to you. The ability that basically was able to grant people bending and take it away. You can take bending away. Here is an ability from ancient times, which relates to the origin of bending full stop. You now have it to take bending away. That's incredibly important given that we had set up from stuff like the library of like the Line Turtles being these ancient creatures and like symbolism with them throughout the series highlighting that they're important. You know, it wasn't explained fully, but where the series goes afterwards doubles down on this in terms of further exploration of energy bending and the Line Turtles. So I think it's important and hopeful for the series that they ended with Aang being able to get out of this dilemma, him being able to win but also keep, you know, things the way he wanted. So number 4, Toph and Mei would have made a wonderful couple. So this is another one of those points of like, is this an unpopular opinion? Not really. Like, most people are perfectly fine with people shipping whoever they want. No one is going to have too much of an issue with that. The reason Zutara is a little bit of a controversial point is because of the history with the arguments between Zutara fans and Katang fans. And the fact that it is the one that is so often argued in relation to it becomes a put-down contest of like, look at how bad Katara and Aang's relationship is. This is why Zuko and Katara should be in a relationship. That's not happening with Toph and Mei, for one, because there's no scenes in the entire show, basically, of them really interacting properly. And I think this post shows exactly why there's nothing to really talk about here. Toph and Mei should have been endgame. I know Mei is older than her, but they have so much in common. They were both born into powerful political families. They're both amazing fighters. They're both emotionally guarded, but open up to the people that they care about. They honestly would have been really cute together, and it would have been good for each other. So they have some similarities that are ultimately relatively vague. We don't know exactly how these would interact in scenes together specifically, but that is enough to say that for sure this should have been this relationship that ended the show. You know, the point here is like, cool, fine. That's how you view Mei and Toph, that they would get along well together. But to then go as far as to say that the show should have confirmed these two as being in a relationship, despite having no scenes together. That is the issue that I always have in shipping discussions. Of like, we have to separate when we're talking about sort of canon scenes versus when we're just doing shipping speculation. And so it's a weird thing of like, it's shipping speculation here, but it's like, and it should have been canon apparently. So I don't really think that's an unpopular opinion. That's just a ship. Aang choosing Katara over the Avatar state is a mistake. Aang should have sacrificed his love for Katara. He was training with that guru dude to control the Avatar state, but at the last hurdle he lost it because he refused to give up his love for Katara. By letting his love go, he would have made a huge sacrifice, good for the plot, without compromising his morals about killing, good for the character, and would leave a clear path for Katara and Zuko to end up together, good for my soul. So, straight away, we should probably just stop reading the point here because the truth has been revealed. The intent of this post is clear. This is not about Aang's choice here. This is about a way for Katara and Zuko to happen. And that's all this person really is about here for the most part. But let's address this point as we go on. It would have brought the whole story full circle, as it began with Aang letting his personal feelings getting in the way of his duties by running away and accidentally turning into a human icicle. So it should have ended with Aang putting his duties as Avatar before everything else. He did that. This all comes down to this misunderstanding of, like, you didn't watch Crossroads of Destiny properly. Aang did choose the Avatar state over Katara. He chose his duty over Katara in the end. Watch the scene just before Azula shoots him down. How does he go into the Avatar state in that scene if he doesn't unlock the final chakra, which is by letting Katara go? He does that. He chooses to go into his little crystal kind of cave to meditate to unlock the final chakra over defending a Katara who is surrounded. He makes that choice. The chakra is unlocked. It's done. I don't get this whole point here is on the basis of, like, I misunderstood a scene. I didn't look into the scene that was there properly enough, because it's all about muship. It's all about Katara and Zuko, that they completely made this terrible point because they were focused on something else. Uncle Iroh is not the wise, kind-hearted old man that everyone makes him out to be. Iroh is a terrible mentor. He tells Zuko not to follow the destiny his father laid out, but then Iroh makes no effort to hide the fact that he wants Zuko to help the Avatar rather than capture him. He's in effect doing the same thing Ozai is. Even worse, Iroh projects his son vicariously through Zuko. He doesn't want Zuko to grow into himself, but rather the man Iroh wants him to be. Now, I think this is actually a quite interesting point. It's just framed a little bit more negatively than it probably should be. I think there's good discussion to actually have here about this, but I think it's this post here specifically is a little bit off. The difference here is that Ozai does create this destiny for Zuko that forces him down this path, and it's a path that Zuko is going down just because he thinks that he has to get his honor back from his father. Iroh, for like most of the series, basically takes the approach of just giving Zuko advice and sort of helping him to just be better, opening his mind up to the value of the different nations, and, you know, helping him see that it's not just all about one path, and he wants Zuko to make the choice by himself. I think a lot of the scenes that they have together are ultimately Iroh just asking Zuko, like, are you sure that is the path that you want to go down? And having Zuko question that. And you see that by the end of, like, book 1. The effort that Zuko has put in to try and capture Aang, but he fails. And finally, a man needs his rest, and he takes the rest. It's him realizing that maybe this isn't the destiny for me. And that's the whole plot of book 2, is Zuko realizing that there is another path for him. Does Iroh ever go too far down the path of sort of like almost like forcing Zuko down a specific path that he wants? I would say no. The only time Iroh properly steps in to sort of really guide Zuko down a specific path is in Lake Laogai, when he finally raises his voice to Zuko and deeply questions what he is doing as the Blue Spirit, trying to, you know, capture Appa here. And he makes a good point here, because it's just like, this is the problem with you going down the Ozai destiny path, is that you are going to get yourself killed making this happen. And Iroh doesn't want Zuko to be killed, so he's asking him to just consider another destiny. But in the end, even in this scene where he most heavily pushes Zuko in a direction, he still puts it all on Zuko. Who are you? What do you want? He doesn't tell him exactly the path to go on. You know, there are moments like later on where he basically does say, you know, I think you know what path it is that you need to take. And he ends up making the reverse decision. But that is why Iroh then stops talking to Zuko until Zuko finally figures stuff out on his own. I think it is a little bit disingenuous to say that Iroh is doing the exact same thing that Ozai is doing. I think Iroh is a good example of letting Zuko figure most of it out himself, but still guiding him so that he doesn't make the ultimate mistake, basically. Of just like stuff like, Iroh ultimately lets Zuko go off on his own why Zuko alone happens, but he does sort of follow him just in case, just to help him and guide him along the way. The fan base puts Iroh on too high of a pedestal. Refusing to fight Ozai when he was told that he was the only one to stop him at the time was just weird. Also, his advice isn't always great. Telling Aang to give up the power that can save the world for Katara was terrible advice. This is a little bit of a simplistic point of just that, yeah, but why does Iroh explain why he can't fight Ozai? The reasons he gives are perfectly valid, of that Ozai is the Avatar's fight. It's simple. No one else basically can take down the Fire Lord without it creating a huge political rift in the world. The Avatar's the only one who can do it, because they're the, balance of all four nations. Iroh can't do it because, as he says, it would just be viewed as Iroh assuming power by defeating Ozai in battle. And even though, as much as Iroh could try and prove it, it would always be a part of history that Iroh killed Ozai and took the throne. Even if he gave it over to Zuko, it'd be him taking the throne by a force. It's the same reason Zuko couldn't just face his father and do it that way. Aang had to be the one to take down Ozai, so I don't think that's a particularly valid point. His advice to Aang, obviously this happens prior to Aang making the choice that he makes, but he's basically just saying that I don't view the decision that you've just made as being this absolutely terrible one. It speaks to what you value as a person, and he just notes that it's a good thing that you value love so much. But in the end, Aang realizes what the Guru was trying to say to him in the end, that it wasn't about 100% or 0, that you just can't ever love Katara, you will have no connection to her going forward. No, you're able to choose in the moment what is the right thing to do. When do you prioritize Katara? When do you prioritize your duty? And that's what Aang was able to do in that scene. Again, another person who sort of misunderstands that scene. 7. Azula deserves some redemption too. Who's disagreeing with this, really? I know there are some people out there who just really think that Azula should remain a villain, but I think most people, to some extent, want an arc of some form of redemption for Azula. Maybe not full redemption, but something to switch up her character a little bit, so that, like Zuko, she has the same upbringing as Zuko. She is just as much of a victim of her father as Zuko is, basically. She deserves that too, basically. I don't think that's an unpopular opinion at all. Sokka is the glue of the squad, but no one gives him any credit. Is that really an unpopular opinion? I think everyone realizes the value of Sokka. And yes, the show at times does paint him in that light of he's always the kind of the butt of people's jokes and so on. But Sokka's mastered the picture that they use here is perfect. That explained, that episode gets into the idea. He is an important member of the group. So that's not an unpopular opinion, really. That's fine. Never given the respect, disregard him in the end. Yeah, I guess kind of you could say, yeah, he's a little bit underused. Is that an unpopular opinion that no one gives him any credit? I'm not sure, but I think most people can agree with that at general point. Zuko should not go through this whole emotional evolution just to end up with Mei. I don't like the phrasing on this, that it's basically Zuko had a big, strong, amazing arc, and he just ends up with Mei, this Mei character. And I think the framing on that is really bad. Mei was a really disappointing choice for Zuko. I don't exactly dislike Mei as a character. She was a strong-willed and skilled fighter, but she never actually had any chemistry, and their romance never developed. Really? Their most romantic moment was, I don't hate you either. That's one of them, but was it their most romantic moment, really? What about the screenshot that they use here? Zuko's story is so focused on his emotional journey and development, to pair him with such a flat character was a disservice. I think this person kind of misses the point of Zuko has an emotional journey because he's so emotionally out there. It actually makes sense that he values someone who is much more composed, in that within their relationship, they both help to sort of even each other out. Zuko brings some of Mei's repressed emotion out, and Mei calms Zuko down a little bit. That to me is kind of exactly what is needed, in that Zuko, his problem, you would definitely say, is that he can get too, emotional about things. So Mei being by his side just to even that out, I think it's a good relationship. Obviously this is just a shipping thing. This is literally just a shipping opinion of like, I don't necessarily view this as being necessarily too much of an unpopular opinion, just because there are so many Zutara fans, and because you're a Zutara fan, inevitably there's a lot of Mei hate out there. I personally really like Mei as a character, so I've never really agreed with this that much. Jet and Zuko are absolutely meant to be. This is just another shipping point. Should have ended up together, had a chance to change and realize he's in with that's not much of a point. It's just like shipping. I've seen some people mention Jet and Zuko as a ship, but there's nothing to talk about there. I don't see how that's unpopular necessarily, outside of just, yeah, that would have been weird. I think people would have actually had problems if those two ended up together at the end. Aang is a problematic protagonist. Why is there always a point like this on these posts? Aang was kind of problematic at times. Of course he was. He tried to push his own belief system onto Katara. Evidence? What? He let her do all the emotional labor in the relationship. What? And he kept kissing her despite the fact that she was not interested. She was interested. She initiated their first kiss. She blushed after the second one. And the third kiss that she did sort of push him away from was that she didn't want to start a relationship before going into a battle. That's the last thing that either of them needed, to start a relationship just prior to the battle. This is just like, I'm going to guess this person's a Zutara shipper, just because those are 100% always used Zutara anti-Aang sentiments, basically. Also, when Katara and Sokka had a chance to see their father, whom they'd not seen in 2 years, Aang hid the map from them. Okay, yeah, that's one of Aang's mistakes within the show. All the characters make mistakes at some point. That is one of Aang's mistakes. Are we going to call all the characters problematic because of the mistakes that they made? Is Zuko problematic because he made tons of mistakes? We have to be realistic here. 12. Mei is a badass girl who deserves more respect. Is that an unpopular opinion? I guess this gets into the idea of, like, ultimately within the fandom, is Mei a really, really liked character, or is she disliked? I ultimately would say the general overall fandom opinion on her is fairly, like, neutral, in that you probably do have just as many people who are really supportive of the character as you do who are sort of against the character for primarily shipping reasons. But yeah, I agree with this. I don't think this is an unpopular opinion. I think especially Smoke and Shadow showed to us that there are a lot of Mei fans out there. Her getting a lot of focus in that book was really, really cool to see. Awesome character. She isn't emotionless, but was raised by toxic parents. Yeah, that's fine. I don't have any problem with that. Katara should have embraced bloodbending. She should have used bloodbending and not have been afraid of it. It's a scary skill, but it could have ended the war faster and destroyed enemies without casualties. Katara is not the sort of character who was ever going to destroy enemies. This is a purely, like, emotionless point of, factually, yes, she could have used bloodbending during a full moon to do a lot of damage, but she also was not going to kill people. Like, it's completely absent of her entire character arc, absent of the emotion and the tension atmosphere around this ability. It's like, technically, yes, this could happen, but she was never going to do it. So, like, this is completely against what the ability is meant to represent. So I think, like, it's an unpopular opinion just because it's like, watch the show, it presents the point well, and this point is, like I said, absent of any of the actual how they deal with the ability. 14. Suki should have been showered with way more love and recognition. That's not an unpopular opinion, especially now, when we've seen a little bit more of her, and there's always the demand for her to be utilized more and considered part of Team Avatar, be included in all of the group shots and stuff like that. I don't think this is an unpopular opinion. I agree that she's sort of underrated by a lot of people, but I don't think it's an unpopular opinion to say that, you know, she's she should be more well respected. So I don't even think that feel the need to go through this point of just like, yeah, she's awesome. I agree. 15, Toph and Sokka would have been a dream come true. I don't really think this is much of a controversial opinion. Taka is a pretty well-shipped ship that still comes up a lot to this day because we don't know who Su Yin's father is. Should have been endgame. Suki's nice and all, but Toph and Sokka had such adorable chemistry, and Toph's little crush on Sokka was too hard to resist. The only problem, I suppose, in canon is that it's very much a one-way relationship. We know Toph has or had a crush on Sokka, and Sokka's with Suki right now. There's not a lot beyond that, I think, in terms of actual, you know, scenes from the show, but at least there was something there to it. So it's one of those ones where, like, there's not too much to argue about, but you know, I suppose the unpopular opinion they should have been endgame over Suki is probably slightly controversial just because it's not set up enough. 16, Aang does not deserve his loyal fan base. So wow, and a second Aang point. This is harsh. Aang was a terrible avatar. Really. Selfish, self-entitled, and unreliable. Throughout 3 seasons, he was more destructive than he was productive. He never had the guts it took to be a great avatar, and he never will. Compared to Katara, he was practically useless. If it weren't for Team Aang himself wouldn't be as beloved as he is. That's just like a character assassination of Aang. Like, again, vague, like just a lot of unexplained stuff of just negative, no actual evidence really. So that's a super hot take there. 17, Yue is a way better match for Sokka than Suki. I suppose ultimately this probably is a little bit controversial. I think most people do agree, just because there's more setup for Sokka and Suki, that it probably would have, you know, that is a better relationship than Sokka and Yue. But I don't think any people have a problem with Sokka and Yue. The problem, of course, is that, like, Yue for plot reasons had to become the moon, so she's not around anymore. But, you know, fair enough if you really connected to that relationship. I don't think there's anything too unpopular about it. I wouldn't say it's a, you know, either a popular or an unpopular opinion. It's just like, that's one of those, like, fair enough type things. 18, Toph is just a giant butthead. Let's see, redeeming qualities. She's rude, uncooperative. I don't think she should have faulted Katara for trying to keep everyone in line. When she and Katara had that huge argument, I totally took Katara's side. So yeah, like I think this is the sort of a fairly valid point about Toph, in that, like, it's not too harsh, but yeah, she is a fairly rude character at times, and it makes her great because of just her whole character together, with how powerful she is, her attitude, her design, everything that goes into it. She's a cool character, but personality wise, yeah, it's not the nicest personality on the show. In that, when I did the video covering, like, 4 legendary masters, like, if I was to be the avatar, who would I want to be my master for the 4 elements? For Earth, you naturally think Toph because she's one of the most powerful earthbenders, but then you're like, do I want her being the way she is to me as my teacher? And my answer was like, no. That, like, I don't think it's too much of an unpopular opinion that, like, yeah, Toph's kind of rude at times, but people seem to like that about her. So I don't know, maybe it's the unpopular thing here is just framing it in this way to really highlight that, like, she's kind of very rude to the point where you can sort of understand why she could be, like, unlikable to some people. And I think that's fair enough. Like, I get it probably is an unpopular opinion because she's a fan favorite, but it's kind of more reasonable here because it is backed up with a few decent moments of, like, yeah, like, just joining the group and how kind of mean she is at times. But, you know, it's part of her personality. We get to see the other side to her, and that's what makes her such a strong character is getting to see the other side as well in episodes like The Runaway and so on, and The Blind Bandit. 19, boys openly crying is one of the best parts of the show. Okay, like, I don't see anyone complaining about this. I don't see that that's an unpopular opinion. That's just, let's put this in here because, I guess, okay. It's really dumb to wish that Zuko and Katara got together. So here's one anti-Zutara point, which I find quite interesting that they did put in here. Zutara makes no sense and is overrated. They hate each other for 80% of the show, and Katara would never marry into the nation that's responsible for her mom's death and the genocide of her people. They're hot, but that's all. You know, how wrong is this point? It's obviously written a little bit like a hot take here, but is it wrong? It's true, they did hate each other for like 80% of the show. Katara would never marry into the Fire Nation, basically. If she wasn't with Aang, and we got to the end of the series after everything that happened, would she completely still rule out the idea of potentially marrying someone from the Fire Nation? I think she'd be a bit more open after that. So the one thing I'd maybe disagree with is that, like, I think by the end of the show, I don't know if this would necessarily be how she views things, but at the same time she was together with Aang at the end, so like this didn't even come into play. But yeah, like it's a little bit hot takey, and I suppose because Zutara fans is quite a large, you know, section of the fandom, it is ultimately a kind of unpopular opinion to Zutara fans. But yeah, it's not particularly wrong of, like, you know, that's always the thing to get over for Zutara fans, is that, like, they did hate each other for most of the show. Bloodbending shouldn't even be a thing. I don't like bloodbending. The episode where it's introduced is awesome and it's definitely really cool to watch, but it sort of disrupts the world of Avatar. If waterbenders can control people through their blood, can airbenders control the oxygen in your blood? Can earthbenders control the iron in your blood? Can airbenders suck the air out of your lungs in battle? The Avatar world always seemed to have an unspoken rule of benders having autonomy over their own bodies. Bloodbending, while awesome, sort of ruined that for me. I suppose this is more of a thought-provoking point here. Just that it's a sort of disruptive ability. It's cool and all, but it kind of gets in the way of, like, the thing that they get across here is that it's easier for waterbenders to do this because the body is ultimately primarily made up of water, so there's a lot of water to target. Whereas with earthbenders, specifically metal benders, targeting the iron in someone's blood is a lot more difficult because it's ultimately, I believe, you don't have that much iron in your blood. And again, with how relatively rare metal benders are, and especially like really delicate metal benders, it's probably not something that's particularly difficult to do. The point about, you know, airbenders controlling oxygen in your blood, they're airbenders, not oxygen benders. I don't think that's a particularly great take. Can airbenders just suck the air out of your lungs in battle? Yes, but not as sort of suddenly as I think the person's leading towards here. We see Zahir do it, we see Afiko do it. It is something that they can do, but what they can't do is literally just, you know, target basically someone's lungs and pull air out in that way. The more of the way they do it is they kind of create almost like a vacuum around your head and suck it out that way. They can't just directly, you know, target it in that way. Again, bloodbending is sort of kept in check by the fact that waterbenders can only do it during a full moon, and otherwise, I think it's fine. Like, it's a little bit like, I get the point they're trying to make here, but ultimately the other examples don't stack up as well. So, Jet is the most underrated character on the entire show. I guess this is a little bit of a hot take because last time I did the sort of character poll for like worst character in part of the Avatar Awards, Jet won that for Avatar, which I was shocked by. I'm like, wow, do people really dislike Jet? Like, of all the characters, people go for him? And I was shocked to see that. So I guess the fandom doesn't particularly like Jet as much. So saying that he's actually really underrated is an unpopular opinion, I guess. Complex, amazingly written character. I think he gets a lot of hate because of his cold-heartedness towards the Fire Nation. That's fair. But he has a very tragic storyline. I agree. He defended his kingdom blindly to the point of paranoia. Yes, the sad thing is he didn't even get definitive evidence that Iroh and Zuko are firebenders. Even worse is that he died at the hands of Long Feng, who was pretty much the leader of the nation he so blindly followed. I don't know about that. Like, I wouldn't say what Zuko did was like hashtag for the Earth Kingdom. He was very much just for his own people and people like him, and was more angry at the Fire Nation rather than sort of being pro other nations against the Fire Nation. The ironic and tragic way he died gets me every time, and that's what I always say. I like, it's so tragic because he died before ever getting to confront the people who actually, ruined his life, made him an orphan, burned down his village, and that was Colonel Monkey and the Rough Rhinos. He never got to confront them and died before that. He, roughly redeemed himself in the end by, fighting alongside Team Avatar in the battle, but died doing so. And the fact that he was one of our young characters who had this tragic backstory and was just killed so bluntly like that by Long Feng, it's definitely tragic for sure. Aang and Katara's relationship is beyond lame. The show ending with Aang and Katara officially getting together was a huge disservice to their characters. I would much rather see Aang devote himself to being history's most revolutionary avatar, and Katara breaking boundaries as a renowned female waterbending master. The two of them worked so hard in all 3 seasons, just for the final focus to be on their uncomfortable forced relationship. This is a bad point because, like, how does the two of them being together stop both of these things from happening? Both of these things happen in the comics, basically. Aang is still doing stuff as the Avatar. Katara is helping him. Katara is continuing to develop as a renowned waterbending master. And ultimately, as we see in Korra, she continues to be recognized as one of the best waterbending masters of all time. Hence why she trains Korra as well. And Aang does go down as being a very world-renowned Avatar for ending the war. They accomplished that as a couple. And so it's just one of those things of just like, this person's ultimate, reasoning behind why it's a lame relationship is just that their relationship is uncomfortable and forced, which I disagree with, because they took their time to develop it. Aang was there from day one, of course. The second he saw her, he was smitten, basically. It took a little bit longer for Katara, but it got there in the end, and I don't think it was forced, and then especially not uncomfortable. Aang and Katara are the Ron and Hermione of Avatar, entirely too forced. Harry Potter opinions, I guess. I don't really know what to say about that. But yeah, that's the article. So I suppose going through it there, it's like, what? Like 5-6 shipping ones, like 3-4 ones that are specifically like anti-Katang, pro-Zutara, and are like, Aang was a problematic character. A bunch of just random ships, basically, and then what else? Like a few characters that are underrated. Like, this article has some really bad opinions. It has some that are just like, wait, how is that an unpopular opinion? And then just some odd ones. It's interesting, like, of course, the fact that there are people who can have such like out there opinions and that are just so badly unexplained. But obviously this article is constructed by them asking for people to write hot takes, basically. Tell us your strong opinions. Of course you're going to get stuff like where was one of the worst ones? Oh yeah, the one about is it number 2? Katara? Yeah, Katara and empathy. This is probably one of the worst ones here. This person, this is incredible here, right here. Yes, she had 0 empathy for those around her. Let's just end on this note. Katara, 0 empathy for those around her, and the fact that contradicted in the same point. Thank you for watching, and bye.